Several items are immediately associated with Woodbadge: the beads, the MacLaren tartan, the neckerchief and woggle, and of course the axe and log. We know the origins of the beads and the tartan and the neckerchief and woggle, but what about the origin of the axe and log? Nelson Block, chairman of the Greenbar Bill Hillcourt Foundation, was here at the museum recently working on part of the Hillcourt collection when we started talking about the origin of the axe and log and its association with the Woodbadge program. Nelson will share with us what he has discovered through his research about the axe and log in this edition of Artifact of the Week. So how did the axe and log come about, and what is its association with Woodbadge? Nelson started his research by reaching out to Kenneth Stevens, a retired Chief Scout Commissioner of the British Scout Association, kind of like our Chief Scout Executive, who in turn contacted Don Potter, who at the time was likely the last living person to have been at the first Woodbadge course held in 1919 at Gilwell Park. Here is Nelson sharing the correspondence he received from Stevens.
Let me read Ken's answer word for word from the letter he wrote me. I asked about the origin of the axe and log symbol, which has been used by Gilwell since the early 1920s. His answer was exactly as I thought. It originated when Francis Gidney, who was then the camp chief of Gilwell, wanted a special logo to denote Gilwell Park as opposed to Scout headquarters. You will understand that Gilwell Park has always been the property of Scout headquarters. Gidney wanted to be sure that, although the park was a part of headquarters, it was quite different and much more associated with the outdoors and woodcraft side of scouting rather than the business side. He therefore adopted the symbol for use on all leader training publications and letterheads. Don reminded me that there was a great deal of practical activity during leader courses run by Gidney, and axes were as prominent as billy cans. Great emphasis was placed on safety with tools, and axes were always expected to be masked by burying the blade in a log of wood. Hence, there were examples of axes properly masked all over the training camp, and they clearly struck Gidney as an ideal symbol to denote all that the training courses stood for.
So before we go too much further, who is Don Potter? Nelson provided a brief scouting bio for Don.
Don was born in 1902. And shortly after he was old enough to become a scout, signed up as a cub, and then in 1919, at the age of 17, was working as a member of the staff at Gilwell Park the first year it opened. He was part of the staff for the first Woodbadge course that took place in September of that year.
Following the first Woodbadge course, Baden-Powell learned of Potter's wood carving talents and hired him to carve totem poles, gates, and other items from 1,200-year-old oak trees for use at the 1929 Jamboree by scouting associations from Australia, Canada, India, South Africa, and New Zealand. In the 1930s, Potter started stone carving and in 1960 carved a statue of Baden-Powell, which stands in front of the Baden-Powell House in South Kensington, London. Baden-Powell House was built as a tribute to Baden-Powell and served as the headquarters for the British Scout Association from 1961 to 2021 when the building was sold. Potter also carved the memorial stone on Brownsea Island to commemorate the 1907 Scout camp held there by BP to test his scouting theories. Don Potter died in 2004 at the age of 102. So back to the axe and log. As indicated in the letter from Stevens, the axe and log were chosen as the symbol of Gilwell Park, and Nelson notes this has remained consistent going back to the 1920s.
The folks at the Scout Association have always held that the axe and log symbol is the symbol of Gilwell Park. Woodbadge has adopted Gilwell Park as, of course, the center of World Woodbadge training. But what it's there to symbolize is not Woodbadge, but Gilwell Park.
As you may recall, Don Potter attributed the source of the axe and log to safety considerations at Gilwell Park. But Nelson notes that the axe and log appeared in several woodcraft and scouting books before that first Woodbadge course in 1919.
Well, the first example that I've been able to find is by our dear friend and co-founder of the Boy Scouts of America, Uncle Dan Beard. In this book, Shelters, Shacks, and Shanties, it appears in the book in a larger drawing, but actually appears on the cover of Shelters, Shacks, and Shanties. And this book was written by Uncle Dan and published in 1914. In addition, an axe and log symbol appeared prior to 1919 in a number of other books. A very popular book published in the United States by Edward Cave, The Boys' Camp Book, which also has a connection to the founding of the Order of the Arrow. Horace Kephardt's book, Camping and Woodcraft, published in 1917. And the Boy Scout Yearbook of 1919, published by the Boy Scouts of America.
While it seems fairly clear how the axe and log came about as the icon of Gilwell Park and by extension the Woodbadge program, he also tells us about a possible more historic connection between the axe and Gilwell Park.
Carolyn Pantling, the head of heritage at Gilwell Park, basically the archivist of the British Scouting Association, points out that there's an interesting connection because Gilwell Park is in the Royal Forest of Waltham and Epping. And she points out that not everybody could carry an axe or cut down trees in a royal forest, actually until 1217 when the Charter of the Forest was promulgated by King John a couple of years after Magna Carta was promulgated. Carolyn thinks that that might be one connection about the beginning of the use of the axe as a symbol related to Gilwell. Of course, our actual symbol isn't just an axe, it's an axe and log.
Soon after the 1919 Woodbadge course, the axe and log appeared at another Woodbadge course, but this time the course was not being offered at Gilwell Park. Nelson tells us more about this course.
So just a few months after the Woodbadge course, one of the participants of the course, John Wilkinson, who later became a physician, put on the first known course outside of Gilwell Park that was actually authorized by the Scout Association. So there may have been other courses, but this was the first one led by someone who had completed the Woodbadge course. Dr. Wilkinson, he later became a physician, was actually one of the first persons to receive Woodbadge beads. If you ask him, he would say he was the first. So there's a picture of Dr. Wilkinson's course, and it shows the axe and log symbol in their group photo. And Gilwell Park says this is the first time they've ever seen that it was used.
By 1923, the axe and log are well established as a symbol of Gilwell Park and a recognition icon of Woodbadge, having appeared in the 1923 Deputy Camp Leader's Guide for those who were going to be putting on a future Woodbadge course. Well, that's all the time we have for this week. Join us next time as we continue to learn more about the history of the BSA through the collection of the National Scouting Museum and Artifact of the Week.